This week on the 414, it's about the evolution of content marketing for B2B marketers. When you think about it, because ongoing lasting relationships are at the heart of B2B, this is why excelling at content marketing will pay dividends. And my guest this week is here to give a thoroughly high-level insight for how you can do just that. Hi, I'm James Rostance and welcome to the 414. Each week with some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing. And my guest today is someone who has an incredible grasp on the latest concepts and direction things are taking within content marketing, as she's the MD of the Content Marketing Association. Welcome, Catherine Maskell.
Hi James, thanks very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So Catherine, could you start by sharing your viewpoint on how content marketing sits within the B2B world?
Yes, thank you. So James, I think content marketing really sits, as you nicely said actually in the intro, at the very heart of good B2B marketing. I think what it takes to really excel at B2B marketing is an understanding of your audience. And what we find and what we see with our awards and our best practice that we do here at the CMA is that those people who really adopt an audience first proposition to their marketing and to their strategy, then that's when they really start to use content to the best of its abilities. Because ultimately, good B2B marketing is about building relationships, it's about understanding who your audience is and developing your products and services to really meet their needs. And I think that's so influential these days. It's a growing situation where the two forces, if they come together, it actually works as a B2B explosion, shall we say.
And what would you see as being key general approaches that are taken by B2B marketers at present, and what perhaps are they doing wrong?
Well, I think and this isn't just really to call out B2B marketers, actually. I think this is something that perhaps, and I've also been guilty of it in the past, so I don't want to appear too critical. But I think what people tend to do is they tend to think in tactics rather than actually thinking about their overall strategy. And I think when I say that, what I mean is that people think, oh, I need a video to communicate this, or I need a piece of research in order to communicate this. And actually, if you go back to putting your audience first and really thinking about your long-term effect and your long-term communication that you have with your audience, I think that's where it becomes more interesting. And I would urge B2B marketers to really step back and say, right, what is it that I want my brand to communicate? What purpose am I trying to drive here? And then how do I do that? And really looking, because this is where some of the most exciting work is really happening actually, is really looking at the diversity of options that are available to you now. And I think sometimes people don't also look at the B2B, B2C tactics and really think about those, because they work within the B2B world too. If you are a member of the C-suite, you are probably not at home very often. And so therefore communicating to me, for instance, the best way would be to do it via Instagram, because that's where I spend a lot of my time, or via LinkedIn. So I think it's really looking at the communication and thinking about what are the high points, what are the engagement points that you can have with your potential customer and even your existing customer along the way.
Okay. Well, in that case, looking to the future, what do you see as being a route or direction which they could take that would ultimately be highly advantageous?
Well, I think in talking to our members, what we see is where those people that are working with those clients and actually our brands who work with us, and where they say they're having the best success is they're taking an editorial view of their brand actually, which is something that not enough people I don't think are doing, and those that are doing it, as I say, are really reaping the rewards. So it's taking a step back and putting content at the heart of your business, So I think, previously all communications have always been thought about as just being part of the marketing team's job or the communications team's job, but actually there's a real opportunity with content to put it at the heart of your business and involve all of your internal stakeholders, so your customer service teams, your social teams, your key stakeholders, the sales teams as well, so that people really understand what your tone of voice is, the message that you're trying to portray, and how you're then portraying that message. Because we've gone beyond as a society, we've gone beyond just being broadcasted to and just being shouted at in terms of, I've got a product to sell and I'm going to tell you all of its key selling points and you're going to buy it. That just isn't the way that any of us operate anymore. And we like to know more of the backstory. We like to know why. We like to know, who we're buying it from. What do they stand for? And I think in order to do that, putting content at the heart of your business, working with your agency partners as partners, which is absolutely key, looking at who you're trying to address in terms of your audience, and then measuring that as well. Because the key parts, obviously, of what we're all doing is to keep the world going round, and measuring that, understanding what you need at the front, so that when you get to the end of the campaign or an end of a certain period, you can really assess what it is that you've done. And I think my top tip, if I could, not to harbour the point too much, would be don't be too afraid of the small numbers. It's if your audience is actually only 12 people and you've got 6 of those people, then 50% is absolutely key. So that's the other key part. Not everything has to be about huge numbers, 2,000 or, 1 million views. Actually, it's, be targeted, talk to those people in the way that they want to be spoken to.
Well, are there any obstacles then, or thought processes which maybe need to be changed or evolved in order to excel with that?
Yes, I think there is. I mean, I don't think, editorializing your brand is not something that actually is an easy route, because getting all of those stakeholders who I mentioned before actually involved and understanding the role that they can play within the marketing communications, has always been a challenge. So I think if that really is where, strong leadership and actually engaging and ensuring that you can deliver back. So the measurement element here, this is where this becomes key, is because it means that you can deliver back and replay to your senior stakeholders what content has delivered. And the other thing that I would say, my second tip actually would be always, look at content from a long-term perspective. So something that you may have produced in January, keep measuring it, in October, December, because the longevity that content gives, it's not a one-hit wonder. It's not an ad that just is there for 30 seconds. This is almost a breathing part of your brand which exists either on digital or indeed in print. And so, people will refer back to that on an ongoing basis. So content really can be the mechanic that just keeps on giving to your brand and adding brand value.
And following on from that then, so what would you say are your current favourite examples of B2B content marketing done incredibly well, and which companies are they for?
Well, I think that there's quite a diverse group of people that who are doing it really well. I think so. For instance, the another membership organisation, the CIPR, they have a quarterly magazine, and they've with the use of AI, actually using that to actually produce a front cover, which then actually turns into a video. So I think there's some real innovative mechanics being used to really drive engagement with what is seen as a traditional format. So looking at things like print, which I think is really interesting, and using that in a different way, because not many people are doing that, and I think that's a big opportunity. We've also we have quite strong ties with a Norwegian agency that has worked with the Norwegian Hospitality Union, and they actually took their B2B campaign one step further, because obviously over Christmas, hospitality staff, there's quite a lot of enjoyment, and so things do get out of hand. And so with them and their staff, they actually developed a cocktail just using water, which was called the Saviour. And so they would hand this out at the start. And I think that's a great example. So at the start of when they had group parties coming in to bars, they would all give them a glass of Saviour, which is water. But I think that's a great example. I know, which is, because I think taking that live element also is really interesting, and using your own staff as the influencers as well. There's a lot of talk about working with influencers. But if you can use your own staff, your own teams, your own connections, that's a great place to start, because they understand what your brand is trying to say.
Okay. I was just trying to get my head around how much of a crazy staff party that must have been. Of here, have some water, and holding a straight face whilst they're doing
exactly. And I think there's also there's quite a lot of brands that are using Instagram, as I mentioned before, actually to talk to those C-suite people. So I receive a number of sponsored posts actually looking and telling me that there's new reports available, or that there's new product development. So if you look at somebody like SEMrush, for instance, they do a lot of work actually on developing the proposition that they're building. They're a platform, and their constant refinement, reporting back. You really feel engaged with them in terms of what it is that they're offering, and you see a vision of where they're going.
From the very forefront of search engine marketing.
Right, yes. Exactly. Yes, yeah. But I think it's interesting that they're looking at different tactics, because you would think that they would just go, perhaps, as you say, they're at the forefront of digital marketing, but they also go back to some of the traditional and more B2C aspects too.
Oh, and finally then, what do you consider to be the most exciting opportunity or development in content marketing right now?
Well, I think for us, this there's the most exciting thing right now, actually, and where the new developments are happening. I mean, obviously, you've got the traditional ones that everybody would think of, which is AI. But I would urge everybody to relook at the world of print, because there is, as I mentioned, there is some phenomenal work going on there. And print, as used as part of a multimedia channel, actually is still having a profound effect. So how we all thought that vinyl was dead. I think it's the same that goes for print, and it really is having a resurgence, because we're all aware of this digital fatigue that we're all of us are actually having, and so print just gives you that different option. It gives you a more of a personalised space, I think. And then contrary to that, there's a lot of exciting work going on in the live space too. People are, again, just looking at ways, we've seen this week actually Amazon, building a bricks and, what do they call it? A clicks and mortar retail store. Even they see a need to actually bring back the traditional values. And I think that face-to-face element, which live events and, I mean, you and I, James, we're here today, our faces in front of camera. I think people want to see the backstory. They want to know who they are, who's actually giving the advice. And I think that live element, using content to really enhance the story, enhance your brand communication, and then enable to actually get at the front in face-to-face, that for me are the most exciting elements.
That's a great note to end on.
I love face-to-face.
Catherine, thank you ever so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome.
And if you enjoyed watching and you'd like to learn more insights and wisdom from some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing every week, then please do follow our page now or subscribe to the podcast. You can also visit the414.net to watch previous episodes. I'm James Rostance. Thank you for watching.